So if an Israeli asks you to pick them up at the airport at 4 o'clock at night, should you do it? When exactly is that? Today on Hebrew Grammar Help, I'm talking all about times of day. Welcome back to Hebrew Grammar Help. I'm Sapir, and today I'm going to talk about something that I've actually never seen anybody teach, all about how different ways to refer to the times of day. Now, we all learn how to tell time, right? How to say, what time is it? And it is 3 o'clock. But we don't actually learn the extra words that we learn to distinguish one 3 o'clock from the other 3 o'clock. And I will be talking about both of those issues today. So I first noticed that something weird was going on when I heard Israelis referring to 2 p.m. as Shtayim Batzohoraim. Tzohoraim usually gets translated as noon. And so an English-speaking person doesn't think of the 2 o'clock hour as possibly being at noon. But Batzohoraim means at noon. So how can it's either 2 or it's noon. It can't be both. It dawned on me that Tzohoraim is not quite as precise as the word noon. And so then I thought, well, what about the other words? Without AM and PM, how do they describe whether something is 8 o'clock in the morning or 8 o'clock at night? And then I realized that different cultures really have a different perspective on the words like morning and afternoon and midday. And so I got together with 2 of my consultants, and we went around the clock, discussed how to refer to every hour of the day. So I do want to tell you a little bit about my consultants. They're both native-born Israelis of Mizrahi descent. So neither of them have any Ashkenazi blood or European blood at all. It's all east of Israel. They both work as Hebrew teachers, so they're both pretty well aware of their language. And one of them is a 30-something guy from the northern part of Israel. He lives north and east, so the area around Tzfat. And the other is a woman roughly my age, and she lives in Haifa. And this is totally unrelated, but my female consultant actually has documentation that she is the 10th generation born in that area, which is pretty amazing. Anyway, I just mentioned the background of the consultants because they didn't always agree with each other. And I'm sure there are other Israelis who might also say, well, no, I wouldn't say it that way. And, we all have, there's the general cultural, this is how it's roughly said in Hebrew. I'm sure there are regional differences. There might be generational differences. There just might be personal differences. And I think of myself when it's 5 o'clock, I sometimes say 5 o'clock in the evening. Sometimes I say 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And why do I say it one way or the other? I don't know. But I just wanted to give a little bit of their background. So to both of my consultants, I give you both a huge todah for all of your help. Okay, so before we talk about the adverbials that describe the difference between the AM hours versus the PM hours, let's just review the basics of how to talk about the time. So here's the word that means what time is it? Ma hasha'ah. And it literally means what is the hour. And if the time is 1 o'clock, we can say hasha'a achat. Or we can say achshav achat, like now it's 1. If we want to say at 1 o'clock something is happening, you can say be'achat. And this is the way they write it. They put the bet and then they put a little dash and then the hour. The hour is written exactly the way we write it. Pretty much all numbers are written exactly the way we write them. When we come from a left to right language and then we start reading Hebrew, we get a little confused. Wait, how do I read this phone number? Which number do I put first? All of the numbers are written from left to right. And so I wrote this, be'achat, and I wrote a 1 and then the, 2 zeros to mean o'clock. And this would be clear to an Israeli that this means at 1 o'clock in the morning. Why? Because without AM and PM, they use military time when they are writing their times. So if it were 1 o'clock in the afternoon, they would write it this way, like 1300, as if it were military time. But they are not going to say it that way. So I've also learned German, and in German we say, we actually say the times. We would say it's 1300, right, or at 1300. But in Hebrew, you write it at 1300, but you say at 1 o'clock, be'achat. And if you need to, if it's a class, hopefully you don't have classes at 1 o'clock in the morning. But if it's a class and you say it's at 1 o'clock, usually that's enough. But if you need to specify 1 o'clock in the afternoon, well, that's what this video is all about. But what if it's 1:15? Well, Hebrew does like most old world languages. They don't use 15 and 30 and 45. They use quarter, half, and another quarter. So to say it is 1:15, we literally say it is 1 and a quarter. So achat va-reva. Achat va-reva. We can do this in English too. We can say it's 1:15, but that's not quite so common anymore. Okay, and on that same note, with 1:30, we would say achat vachetzi, 1 and a half. So kind of like 1:30. And then for the 45, you say it's 1/4 to the next hour. So reva le-2. All right, now that we've gotten that out of the way, let's go round the clock and see how we're going to refer to all of these hours. So at 12 a.m., this is midnight, and so they would say chatzot. And you can kind of see chatzot is related to the word chatzi or chetzi, and it's because it's like the halfway point between the 2 days, right? It's halfway between the day before it and the day after it. And now to say it is 12 o'clock midnight right now, you would say achshav chatzot. You cannot say hasha'a chatzot. Side note, one of my consultants was like, why would you ever need to say that? Well, she herself is guilty of this. The United States has 6 different time zones if you're including Alaska and Hawaii. Israel only has 1, but they do often get confused as to what time it is for us, right? Because they may be used to, okay, New York is however many hours behind them. But if we don't live on the East Coast, then, you have to add some more hours to the difference between the hours between Israel and the hours between your time zone. So they do get confused. And then it gets especially confusing right around the time the clocks change for daylight savings time, because our clocks change at a different time than their clocks change. So this just happened. We just went through a time change, and there was like a 3-week period where we had gone on to daylight savings time, but they were still on winter time. And so, it gets confusing. And I had a teacher wondering why nobody was awake, and I said, well, it's midnight here. And so I had to know how to say it is midnight. And so saying it's midnight is not something that is ridiculous, a ridiculous thing to have to say. It's not like you're talking to your neighbor next door. And so midnight really, it is actually very precise, just like in English. It is the 12 o'clock hour. And so you don't get any hours around it that are also referred to as midnight. All right, so 1 o'clock a.m. in Hebrew is achat balayla. So they call it 1 o'clock at night. And We always get a good laugh when we're talking about this because to English speakers, 1 o'clock at night sounds so weird. But to a Hebrew speaker, to say 1 in the morning sounds really weird. Because in Hebrew, morning is really from the time the sun comes up until noon. The earlier hours are not considered morning to them. So when we say 1 in the morning, they're also thinking, well, wait, what time is that? All right, so 2 a.m., same thing, shtayim balayla. And for 3 a.m., both of my consultants agreed that shalosh balayla is appropriate. But my male consultant also thought that, especially during the summer months when the sun comes up much earlier, that shalosh lifnot boker can also be appropriate. So let's talk about this phrase, lifnot boker. So lifnot is basically like lifnei, meaning before, but it just gets special uses. It is used really only for times of day. So lifnot boker, lifnot sohoraim, lifnot erev, or also there's an expression, lifnot chag, meaning the hours right before a holiday starts. And so if in your culture, in your mind, you're thinking that boker is only the hours when the sun is up, then 3 o'clock before that time makes sense. But if you're coming from a culture where morning is the entire span from midnight to noon, then what's before morning? Before morning is the night before. So, this is a little one that gives us a little bit of trouble. Okay, 4 a.m. My female consultant said that arba lifnot boker is acceptable, especially during the summer months when the sun comes out pretty early. But she also felt like, especially during the winter when you're still hours away from the sun coming up, arba balayla was perfectly acceptable. Now, my male consultant said no, arba has to be lifnot boker. 5 a.m. can be 5 lifnot boker if the sun has not come up yet, or 5 baboker if the sun has already come up. So this one's going to be different depending on the time of year. All right, so from 6 to 11, both consultants agree that all of these hours will be baboker. So 6 baboker, 7 baboker, 8 baboker, 9 baboker, 10 baboker, 11 baboker. Because it's morning, the sun has come out. Basically, no matter what time of year it is, the sun is out, and it's morning time. All right, 12 noon. Now, in English, we can say noon, we can say 12, we can say 12 noon. For this hour, one of my consultants said sohoraim, and the other one said 12 bat sohoraim. You know, there is the potential for confusion if you're not sure if you're talking about a very specific time or not. But if you are talking about a very specific time and you say tzohoraim and there's no other hour to go along with it, then that means noon. That means 12 o'clock. But you'll see that tzohoraim is definitely not, it definitely spans a huge amount of time. In English, if I say 12:30, in my opinion, we're already past noon. That's not noon anymore. That's 12:30 in the afternoon. All right, but both of them agreed. 1 o'clock p.m. is achat bat sohoraim. It sounds like 1 o'clock noon or 1 o'clock at noon. This doesn't make sense to an English speaker because it's afternoon. Noon was an hour ago. That's because we're translating tzohoraim as noon. If you think of tzohoraim more as midday, then it starts to make more sense. 1 o'clock midday, right? 1 o'clock is still midday. So yeah, tzohoraim is better translated more as midday. All right, 2 p.m., same thing. Shtayim bat tzohoraim. Now 3 p.m., that's a different story. One of them said shalosh bat tzohoraim. The other one said shalosh acharei hatzohorayim, 3 o'clock afternoon. Okay, 4 p.m. One of them said it could go either way. It could be arba batzohorayim or arba acharei hatzohorayim. So 4 o'clock midday or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. The other one said nope, it had to be afternoon. So arba acharei hatzohorayim. 5 p.m. could be chamesh acharei hatzohorayim or chamesh ba'erev. 5 in the afternoon or 5 in the evening. And this is one that, me too, in English, I feel like 5 o'clock can be afternoon, 5 o'clock can be evening. And I don't know, maybe it sometimes does depend on the time of year, whether the sun is down or not. But I don't know. It also depends on what my life is doing. If I'm eating at 5 o'clock, if I'm eating dinner, if I'm getting the early bird special at 5 o'clock, then I'm going to definitely call it evening. All right, 6 o'clock. One of them said, shesh lifnot erev. And this is the female consultant. She's the same one that called 5 o'clock afternoon, right? So shesh lifnot erev. So to her, this is going to be before evening. So it's like the onset of evening, right? Shesh lifnot erev. The other one said shesh ba'erev. For 7 o'clock and 8 o'clock p.m., they both said sheva ba'erev and shmone ba'erev. For 9 p.m., one of them said tesha ba'erev, the other one said tesha balayla. And for 10 and 11, both of them said eser balayla ve'achatesre balayla. So I think the hours that give us the most problems are the wee hours of the morning, which, by the way, Israelis refer to as hasha'ot haktanot shel ha-laila. They call them the wee hours of the night. And also the early afternoon hours, which we always refer to as afternoon and Israelis think of as midday. So that's it for today. I really hope you found this information helpful and useful. If you have any questions or feedback, leave it in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, hit like. And if you want to see more, subscribe and hit the notification bell. Lehitraot bapa'am aba'ah. See you next time.